Hey, I made a new Pokemon game.
Oh, wow, that's cool. Is it good? Is
Why would you
is it good?
why would you ask me that?
That's a fair question. Is it
why would you
good? I
ask
just
me
want to
that? Why
know.
would you say that? Why would you say that?
I just
Why would
want
you
to.
say that? Why would you say that? Why would you say that to me? Why would you say that to me? Why would you say that to me? Why would you say that to me?
I want to say this loudly and unambiguously. I hate Pokémon Legends ZA. I hate its gameplay, its presentation, and most of all, I hate what we lost. Because, to be frank, this could have been the best Pokemon game we have ever had, and Pokemon decided that they didn't want that. I simply wanted more, and paradoxically, I also wanted less. My discontent with this game is nuanced, and I hope that with a bit of time, I can better explain why I hate this game as much as I do. But before we get into that, I want to talk to you all about my Patreon. Content is my full-time job, and I love what I do. And in order to do what I do, I, well, need to get paid and eat. So if you're interested in keeping me alive and want to see content that isn't available anywhere else, please consider joining my Patreon. It's just $2. Thank you so much for your time. Now back to the video. I mentioned earlier that my dislike of this game is nuanced, and many of those nuances can be neatly stacked into three categories. 1 being mechanics, 2 being aesthetics, and 3 being expectations. Those categories may have subcategories, but I believe everything I have to say fits within these neat boxes, even if I may struggle to put the lids on them. My hope is that in organizing my thoughts, I can plead my case, not necessarily for why these games are bad. That's subjective. That's a thing that you have to decide. But more so that the games, even if you like them, are still worth critiquing. And thus, I begin my critique. Pokemon Legends ZA is a direct sequel to the game Pokemon Legends Arceus, which came out on the Nintendo Switch in 2021. But you wouldn't think that ZA is a sequel based on its gameplay, as it's very different from Pokemon Legends Arceus. Where Pokemon Legends Arceus is set in multiple sandboxes that allow for frequent battling and exploration with varied forms of traversal, including riding on the backs of multiple Pokemon, ZA is set in a single city with a parkour system that is mapped to specific parts of the city. You trade flying on an eagle and climbing mountains on the back of a monster for ladder climbing, running, and not being able to jump over small ledges. ZA removed those movement mechanics, and many of the fans have been saying that the game doesn't need rideable Pokemon because it's set in a city. But I find this defense to be flawed, seeing as this game is set in Kalos, the home region of Generation 6, aka Pokemon X and Y. Specifically is set in Lumio City, a city and a region where you ride Pokemon, are given a bike and rollerblades, and the ability to do tricks. That's right, folks. The 3DS games give you more movement options than the Switch 2. You will spend most of the time traversing this game in the pause menu. And make no mistake, the old games also had fast travel options via the HM Fly or just using the fast travel function in the map in the predecessor of this game, Pokemon Legends Arceus. But at least in Arceus, getting around was fun. And I just can't say that for ZA. The 3DS games even gave you movement puzzles in the form of rails that you could grind on in your roller skates, and even though the parkour sections of Pokemon ZA exist, the fact that you can't jump over small ledges because they put platforming into a game with no jump button makes everything cumbersome and uninteresting. You're not able to run, jump, and climb anything you want. It's all walled off into specific sections of the game that are simply uninteresting and ill-equipped to support this sort of mechanic. Movement aside, the most drastic changes that occurred in Legends ZA were the changes that they made to the battle system. Pokemon from generation to generation tend to lean towards turn-based battle styles. Every single game is an RPG that engages in turn-based battle. Even Legends Arceus largely left this system alone, but they did make a couple of tweaks that I think are worth note. Arceus introduced strong style and agile style moves. Strong style moves did extra damage at the cost of speed, meaning that your opponent would be able to attack multiple times in a row before you were allowed to attack again, and agile style moves lowered the power of your attacks, but concurrently allowed you to attack multiple times within a turn ahead of your opponent. You weren't just attacking and waiting for your opponent to attack, you were making a decision about when you would be able to attack, which completely changed how battles work. Also, while using strong style and agile style moves took extra power points being the number of times you could use a move within a single battle, meaning if you had stronger moves that only had 5 power points, using a stronger agile style move would reduce your power points by 2 instead of by 1, meaning you had less chances to use that attack. So you were deciding how much ammo you would be loading into every attack, how much damage you would be doing, or whether or not you would be able to attack multiple times. Legends ZA has real-time battling where your attacks are mapped to certain buttons and they're on a cooldown. No more power points, no more losing access to your moves, and no more worrying about how much power you need to put into them or whether or not you're going to attack multiple times in a row. You just need to click the button, hope the opponent gets knocked out, and hope you can survive a hit if they hit you, which is any fight, but there's a layer of nuance that's missing to this. A lot of people consider this new battle style to be groundbreaking, and it would be, except it's just Diablo. It's just Diablo. This is Diablo. This is how Diablo plays. And Dragon Age. This is just Dragon Age. Pokemon elected to breathe new life into its battle system by copying another battle system that's also more than 20 or 30 years old. And it's not as if Pokemon is doing this competently. The attack buttons and dodge buttons are all mapped to the same button, and you can't dodge unless you're not locked on, and you can't attack unless you are. Meaning you lose agency on when to dodge, when to attack, and whether or not you can do both at the same time since you have 2 hitboxes, both your own and your Pokemon are glued to you. They will follow you if they're not in the middle of an attack animation, so oftentimes you will move to dodge an attack just for that attack to follow you and your Pokemon, hitting you both and putting you both at risk for fainting. And if you're trying to attack back, you can't dodge because your attack buttons are also, like I said earlier, your dodge button. You simply have less options, and the way Pokemon works, it's sort of built for turn-based gameplay. I know many people were tired of Pokemon's turn-based gameplay, but it was refined. And honestly, if you wanted a change of pace, we had Pokken, and you didn't support it. You asked for a fighting game, you didn't play it when you got it, and now the other Pokemon games are worse because they're trying to turn those games into fighting games even though they don't fight good. It feels as though the battle mechanics of this game are not built to operate particularly well with the other battle mechanics of this game. None of them are cooperating. They're almost competing for space, and because they do that, they create a clunky and unplayable mess. Another mechanic that shifted is how catching Pokemon works. And to be fair, ZA isn't the first game to do this. Pokemon Legends Arceus also changed how catching Pokemon works. Normally, you would have to battle a Pokemon, get it into red health, and then catch it once it's weakened. But Legends Arceus changes all of that. You can sneak up on Pokemon, throw Pokeballs at them, and catch them when they're not looking. And if you throw a Pokeball at the back of a Pokemon's head or the back of its body, you hit it with a backstrike, which increases the chances of you catching that Pokemon without engaging it in battle. You also have the ability to throw items in specific directions that get the Pokemon to look in that direction. So you have this interplay of distracting Pokemon with food or noises so that they turn around, so that they don't see you, so that they don't attack you, so that they don't make you faint, which makes you lose your items because you have an inventory that you need to manage, and getting knocked out makes you lose certain items. And it's
interesting. It's panic inducing. It puts me on the edge of my seat whenever I have to deal with sneaking past an alpha Pokemon or a Pokemon that's in charge of a pack that's also much bigger than the other Pokemon of its species. Because those things are aggressive and they can harm you, and they're usually much stronger than the Pokemon in the area. There was interplay with a multitude of systems that were all supporting each other in order to create an experience that heightened what catching a Pokemon meant. But ZA has done away with all of that, and now it has shifted so severely that you can knock Pokemon out and still throw your Pokeballs at them, meaning all challenge and restraint and not knocking a Pokemon out too quickly and using status moves. All of that is gone. You just go. You hit them as hard as you can, and then you throw the Pokeball at them because you were stronger, and you hit them as hard as you can. This game has removed all thought from interacting with its systems. The final nail in the coffin, mechanically for me, would be the Mega Evolutions. Mega Evolution is when a Pokemon that is fully evolved evolves a little bit further than it's normally capable of doing via the use of a Mega Stone and Mega Ring. Every Pokemon that's capable of Mega Evolution has a corresponding Mega Stone with its name on it, and it is able to Mega Evolve, which raises its stats and oftentimes changes its appearance, and even sometimes its typing. These Pokemon's abilities or special effects also change. Now, Pokemon Legends always gets rid of the abilities. Legends Arceus didn't have abilities, and Legends ZA doesn't have them either. The difference is Pokemon Legends Arceus doesn't have any Pokemon that require the use of their abilities, but ZA does. Some of these Mega Pokemon simply do not function particularly well if they can't use their special abilities in battle. A Pokemon that is a perfect example of this, and also consequently one of my favorites, is Gyarados. Gyarados has the ability Intimidate, which lowers the attack stat of other Pokemon on the field. When Gyarados comes out, their attack stats go down, which allows Gyarados to tank hits that it might not be able to normally. But when it Mega Evolves, its effect turns to Mold Breaker, and Mold Breaker allows all moves to hit a Pokemon despite their ability. So if you're running a Gyarados that's fighting a Pokemon like Electros, which has the ability Levitate, which disallows all ground type moves from hitting it because it's technically floating, Mold Breaker will still hit Electros, which makes Gyarados really, really strong, and Electros is no longer capable of checking Gyarados or avoiding ground type attacks. When you strip these Pokemon of their abilities, their usage changes. Now, Gyarados, Mega Evolved or not, is an extremely strong Pokemon, but Electros isn't, and its only saving grace is that it's an electric type Pokemon, which is normally weak to ground type moves, is now completely immune due to Levitate, but because of the loss of Levitate, now it's not particularly usable, even after being Mega Evolved. It just can't handle ground type attacks. It's lost its ability to do so, so now it's susceptible to the one type of Pokemon that can check it, and it's not strong enough to justify using. Mega Pokemon actually need their abilities. Otherwise, there's just no point in using them because they're just Pokemon with high stats. And any Pokemon in the game can have high stats if you're willing to train it. ZA made its core mechanic, Mega Evolution, useless in the home region where Mega Evolution was introduced to us in the first place. It sold us on the idea of Mega Evolution without contextualizing whether or not Mega Evolution would work well in a game with no abilities, which most Mega Pokemon need to function. Pokemon ZA defeated its own point. In this game, you participate in a battle competition where you start at rank Z and you battle all the way up to rank A, Z through A, the literal title of the game. The issue is that halfway through, or I wouldn't even say halfway through, maybe a third of the way through, you skip most of it. When you reach rank V, you engage in a mandatory story battle and you skip all the way up to rank F. Pokemon Alphabet let you skip half of the alphabet. The thing on the title that you're supposed to do doesn't matter. And it's built that way in the story. If I could describe Pokemon Legends ZA in one term, one word, one phrase, it would be mechanically imbalanced. ZA simply has no interest in doing anything meaningful. It creates systems, and those systems get in the way of other systems, which make the game a muddy and unplayable mess. But not only is this game not enjoyable to play, it's also really unenjoyable to look at. I'm going to upset some people when I say this, but it needs to be said. A lot of these Mega Pokemon are ugly. And to be frank, a lot of Mega Pokemon were always ugly, but a lot of these newer ones take the cake. Mega Pokemon were always over the top and kind of silly looking, but a lot of the newer ones really take the cake. They push the envelope on what I'm willing to accept. And I just can't accept these. They're gross. I don't have much of a logical basis for explaining why I don't like these monsters. I just don't like the way they look. I do think that some of them are fundamentally lazy, but I have no data to prove that they're lazy. Just speculation and vitriol based on my own taste. I'm going to say it. I think Mega Pyroar should have had two separate Mega Evolutions, or two different forms of the same Mega Evolution for the male and female Pyroar. If you're going to do the whole sexual dimorphism thing, why would you lean out of it for the Mega? It's lazy. I don't care that putting the fire kanji on top of the fire kanji might mean something different. I don't know. I can't confirm that. I've only ever seen it on Reddit, and those people lie all of the time. But I do know that I don't like the way it looks. Just because something is a reference doesn't mean it's good. Just because something has a reason behind it doesn't mean it's enjoyable to look at. And some of these just aren't enjoyable to look at. I hate Mega Feraligatr, which is sad because Totodile was my favorite out of the 3 starter options. And I didn't pick my favorite starter because I hate the Mega that it got. I just couldn't deal with the toilet bowl lid. I just didn't have it in me. Many people are saying that it's a reference to it looking like Totodile, but guess what? Feraligatr already looked like Totodile. It was its goddamn evolution. The big alligator did indeed look directly related to its own baby. It was redundant, it was lazy, it was ill-conceived, and it was stupid. Making it look like its own baby and going, get it, it's a reference, is fucking stupid. It already looks like that. They already look similar. They're directly related to each other. Just make a good goddamn Mega. I look at these Megas and I don't see well fleshed out Pokemon. I see memes. These things are fucking memes. These are jokes. And I just don't care for it. Am I a card-carrying member of the Dragonite hate train? No. Mega Dragonite doesn't mean anything to me because I don't use Dragonite regularly anyway. But Mega Starmie, what the fuck was that? I don't care if it's a reference to Tokusatsu, Ultraman, whatever you want to call it. I don't like the thing. It's weird. It's uncomfortable. It's gross. And I want it away from me. Like I said earlier, I don't have logic for this. I just don't like the way they look. I feel like Pokemon was taking the piss with some of these. I just can't do it. And I think what bothers me more is how many of the new ones look good compared to the really shitty ones. Like, Mega Frostlass looks incredible. How the fuck did this happen? Next to this. Where is quality control? The Mega Pokemon have always been hit or miss, ever since 2013. But with 12 years of hindsight, I just figured they would be past that and be able to make things that are consistently good looking. And they can't. They just can't. This game is full of Mega Pokemon, and I don't want to use most of them. And isn't that sad? That I hate the reason this game exists so much? Because of how unbecoming some of the monsters are? I don't like the way the Pokemon in Pokemon look. But in my dislike of Pokemon in the Pokemon game, how much of that am I responsible for versus the company that made the games? Now, something that I did that maybe I shouldn't have is that I entered this game with expectations, and that's never a good idea. You should try to treat every experience in a vacuum, or at least a lot of people think that. I don't necessarily think that's true. I expected this game to play similarly to Pokemon Legends Arceus in regards to battle style and mechanics and general cohesion, and that's not what I got. And on one hand, like everyone says, you should just enjoy the games in a vacuum, but is it really all that far-fetched to expect a game that is a direct sequel to play like its predecessor? I don't think anybody would lambaste me if I expected Tekken 8 to play like Tekken 7. I don't think the expectation of narrative and mechanical consistency is all that far-fetched in this context. In fact, I think it's necessary. I often think about the Digimon World series when thinking about the inconsistencies between these two games. Digimon World 1 and 2 play completely differently. They have different battle styles and different evolution mechanics and different exploration styles. And when you put them next to each other, it's almost as if they're completely different games, that they're not related at all. And that inconsistency between entries made it really difficult for Digimon to get a foothold in the US. What really saved Digimon in the West was its handhelds. They weren't Pokemon, but they were consistent. If you played Dawn and Dusk and DS right after each other, everything would make sense because everything was consistent. There weren't these drastic shifts in gameplay, so people knew what to expect from entry to entry. And that sort of consistency when building a brand is immensely important. And it seems like in these newer entries, Pokemon has sort of lost the plot on that. I don't mind experimentation, but the game should play similarly. And now Digimon is doing better than ever. And Pokemon is branching out in these weird ways that don't really seem to benefit the franchise as a whole. Experimentation for experimentation's sake just isn't good. You need to ask yourself key questions. Why am I changing my battle style? Why does the direct sequel of a game need to play so vastly different from its predecessor? Was something broken? Was something wrong? Or am I just trying things to see what sticks because I want to keep things fresh? Should I make a completely different entry in this franchise that already exists? Or should I start a different series of side games so that I can experiment with this playstyle? Is what I'm doing beneficial to the franchise that I'm trying to build? Or should I start a completely different project that isn't necessarily connected to the sequel that I'm making? Is my sequel actually a sequel if I'm going to change so much? I think Pokemon has some questions that it needs to start asking itself before it gets to work on another entry in any of its series, mainline or side. Otherwise, I don't think they're going to make it as a franchise. I think they're going to struggle. And to be frank, I don't think I'm going to be a part of that struggle with them. I have not paid my own money for a Pokemon game in years. They come out around my birthday, so I usually get them as gifts. So I will not be contributing to this franchise if this is what it's going to offer me. In the meantime, I hope they learn from this. And I hope you all learn from this too.
Yo, what's up, fellow Pokemon fans? It's bedtime for me, and I got my bonnet on, so I'm going to lay down and I'm going to catch a couple of Z's. It's 1 a.m. right now where I am. I was thinking about something that a commenter said to me on one of my skits when I was talking about how I don't like that Pokemon was changing art styles and battle styles in between entries, and how I don't think that that's a good idea. And a bunch of people said it's a side game, they're supposed to experiment. But I think about Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. Mystery Dungeon is a side game, and a lot of the Mystery Dungeon games play similarly to each other. And it made me realize something about Pokemon fans that I hadn't, because even though I love Pokemon and I have multiple Pokemon tattoos, I don't really participate in the fandom the same way other people do. And what I realized is that people kind of don't care what happens as long as it's Pokemon. The bar for Pokemon is extremely low, and people sort of expect Pokemon to not work properly, not look good, and not be on par with other games. And I feel like that's extremely infantilizing and insulting to Pokemon and to yourselves as fans. I think you should want more. And I think it's okay to want more from Pokemon because they are capable. They are a multi-million-dollar corporation. And to that side game comment, yeah, no, sequels should play like the game that came before them, whether they're side games or not. Pokemon Pinball needs to be pinball, even if it's Pokemon Pinball 2. It needs to be pinball. The pinball needs to be pinball. It's just a weird defense that I didn't understand, and that I still don't to this day. But I digress. What do you think about the gameplay changes? Do you enjoy them? Do you think they're good? Do you think they're bad? What should we be doing as fans? Should we be boycotting? Should we be withholding our money? Should we play other games? I like to branch out into other games, so I don't get tired of Pokemon's turn-based play style because I just play other games. I go to Pokemon for a turn-based because Pokemon is a turn-based game. And if I want to play a real-time action game with monsters, I just play something else that actually does that. I don't need Pokemon to fill every hole that I have for gaming because I just fill it with other games. Pokemon fans, do you think you need to branch out in your taste and try other things? All questions that I think are worth asking yourselves. All questions that I would love to have you answer in the comments. Also, you can tell me if you think I suck, or you could check out my Patreon because that's where it's going to be. Well, it's going to be in the description, not the comments. I don't know. I'm tired. Again, it's 1 a.m. Thank you all so much, and I hope you have a good one. Bye.